everyone, welcome back to my channel. This is Brittany at Under the Radar Books, and today I want to talk about my favorite books of 2015. I have 12 of them, so let's jump right into it. I'm not going to do a huge description of each one because a lot of these I've actually previously talked about on my channel. If you do want any extra information, you can always comment down below and I can give you a little synopsis or extra info if you would like. These are in no particular order. These are just all the ones that have really stood out for me. And this year was such a good reading year for me, and it was so hard to narrow it down. There are so many other books that I gave 4 and 5 stars, but these ones were the ones that stayed in my mind the most for the year. So the first one on my list is The Dumb House by John Burnside. This is probably not a surprise to a lot of people because this book has been making its rounds on BookTube. Thank you so much to Jen Campbell, #Burnsided. But I loved this book. It was written so beautifully, and I read it so slowly because I just wanted to savor it. The language was incredible. It was such an interesting story and such a haunting story. I will just quickly read the synopsis because I think it is brilliant and it describes the story perfectly. It says, as a child, Luke's mother often tells him the story of the Dumb House, an experiment on newborn babies raised in silence designed to test the innateness of language. As Luke grows up, his interest in language and the delicate balance of life and death leads to amateur dissections of small animals, tiny hearts revealed still pumping as life trickles away. But as an adult, following the death of his mother, Luke's obsession deepens, resulting in a haunting and bizarre experiment on Luke's own children. So you can probably guess that he decides to start doing experiments in human beings to try to discover where the soul lies and whether language is something that can be developed on its own or whether it is taught. And it is so interesting. I urge you to pick this up. It is slightly disturbing at some parts, so if you are not into that kind of thing, I'm not sure if you will like it, but I would recommend anybody to go ahead and give it a try. And I'm very excited to pick up more of John Burnside's books in the new year. Next up on my list is Annihilation by Jeff Vandermeer. This is the first book in the Southern Reach trilogy. And I can't even remember where I heard about this. Maybe I just picked it up in a bookstore. It is a science fiction novel about this area called Area X in the United States, and it has been basically quarantined from the rest of civilization. A variety of people are sent in on these expeditions to try to explore the area and to figure out what is going on there. And each expedition that goes in has a variety of people. There's like a psychologist, a botanist, a scientist, a soldier, things like that. Each expedition that goes in, and they come back in very, very terrible state. They either go crazy, they commit suicide, they disappear. And so something obviously is going on in this Area X that they're trying to figure out what it is. And that's all I'm going to say because I went into this completely blind, and I'm so glad that I did because it blew me away. The writing is great, it is so mysterious, and it has stuck with me probably more than any book that I've read this year. And this is by far my favorite in the trilogy. I do recommend the entire thing. I think it is wonderful. So if you are reading sci-fi, looking to get into sci-fi, this is a great place to start. It's a very literary sci-fi book, so I can't recommend this enough. Next up is Bones and All by Camille DeAngelis, and I've mentioned this a couple times in my videos. The book first starts by her mother leaving Marin at home with the babysitter when she's 2 years old. And when her mother comes home, all she finds is a Marin and a pile of bones. So you learn that Marin is actually a cannibal. I mean, they don't come out and say the word cannibal in this book, but she eats people. And you find out that there are other people in the world that do the same thing. And it basically follows her struggles with this. She doesn't want to do it. She doesn't want to hurt anyone, but it's something that she must do to survive. And it's very fascinating. It's like a new take on a zombie tale. Anyways, it's very hard to describe, but if you like weird fiction, please pick this up because you will really like it. I promise. I won't let you down. Next up on my list is The Secret History by Donna Tartt, and this is my first Donna Tartt book that I have read, and I'm so glad that I picked it up because this blew me away. It is so stunning, and this book is about Richard, who goes to a New England college and wants to study ancient Greek, and he meets a variety of misfits and they start to bond together. And the book starts out letting you know that one of the friends has been murdered, and then it works backwards from there to explain, instead of a whodunit, it's more like a whydunit, and they backtrack through the story about how this all came to pass. And please, if you are intimidated by this, do not be intimidated by this book. It is so wonderful. It's very fast-paced. I just flew through it, even though it's quite hefty. I couldn't put it down, and I still think about it today. So please pick this book up if you are tempted. Do not be intimidated. It is great. Next up is In the Meantime by Paull Tremblay, and this is a short story collection. This is actually one of the first short story collections that I ever really got into, and I think that's why it stands out so heavily in my mind. It is magical realism. It is quite dark, quite creepy. The stories involve things like children surviving in a theme park after an apocalypse, a story about Siamese twins, and a pregnant woman who has pica, which is where you eat things you shouldn't, like chalk and things of that nature. I will definitely be rereading some of these at some point, and if you're looking to get in short story collections, you like dark fiction, this is a really good place to start. If you love short story collections, please pick this one up. I don't think it's very well known. I've never seen it on BookTube, and I would love for more people to read it. Next up on my list is The Girl Who Circumnavigated Fairyland in a Ship of Her Own Making by Cathrynne and Valente. This is a children's fantasy series about a young girl named September who goes to a magical land called Fairyland, and there she sets out on a mission to beat the evil Marquess and to help save Fairyland. And this is so wonderful, so whimsical. Even if you don't read children's fiction, this is just, the writing is fantastic. I've seen so many adults who just adore it as much as I did. And I would at least give just the first one a try. It's really not very long. It has beautiful illustrations, and it is just overall a wonderful read. It was kind of reminiscent of Alice in Wonderland for me, and since that is one of my favorite books, you can't really go wrong, so highly recommended. And the next book that was one of my favorites was the Bookshop Book, and this is by the lovely Jen Campbell. And this book is about bookshops all over the world and how important bookshops are and why we love them. It is basically just a book lover's dream. I think about this all the time. I open up the pages constantly to look at all the bookstores, and I think it's gonna be so great for when I travel. I can look up the best bookstores in the area, and it's just wonderful. And this is a great gift for fellow book lovers, so I can't recommend this enough to all of you. Next up on my list is Saga Volume 1. This is also probably no surprise to any of you. This has just been flying around BookTube and the literary world in general, but it really does live up to the hype. Saga is kind of like a Romeo and Juliet retelling in space. These two characters are from different planets, and they are their planets are in a war, and they actually end up falling in love and having a baby. And this follows their struggles as trying to escape together and to stay safe and raise their child through this tumultuous world that they live in. And the characters are just so relatable. It is funny, exciting. It has the perfect mix of all of those things. And I am now on the 3rd volume, and I can't wait to read the rest. So if you haven't picked this up, please do so. Next up on my list is You by Caroline Kepnes, and I read this in October for Halloween, and this follows a young man who begins to stalk a girl that comes into his bookstore that he works in, and it is just stayed with me so much because it's such a unique main character, because he's so creepy and you know what he's doing is wrong, but you can't help rooting for him in some way, and I just find that so fascinating. He's very unreliable as a character, which we all know that I really love and appreciate, and I feel like it's so complex as a story that I will be thinking about it for a very long time. The sequel is coming out pretty soon, and I can't wait to get to that one. So if you like thrillers, this is fantastic, and I can't recommend it enough. Next up is Our Endless Numbered Days by Claire Fuller, and I first heard about this on the podcast The Readers. This was a book that Simon, who is one of the hosts, was really looking forward to in the new year, and I put it on hold at my library, and I loved it so much I had to get my own copy, so I got this for Christmas, which is great. I'm just going to read you the back because I think it does a great job explaining, and it gets right to the point about what this book is about. Peggy is 8 years old when her survivalist father, James, takes her from their home in London to a remote hut in the woods and tells her that the rest of the world has been destroyed. Deep in the wilderness, Peggy and James make a life for themselves. They repair the hut, bathe in water from the river, hunt and gather food in the summers, and almost starve in the harsh winters. They mark their days only by the sun and the seasons. When Peggy finds a pair of boots in the forest and begins to search for their owner, she unwittingly unravels the series of events that brought her to the woods, and in doing so discovers the strength she needs to go back home and to the mother she thought she'd lost. After Peggy's return to civilization, her mother learns the truth of her escape and what happened to James on the last night out in the woods, and of the secret that Peggy has carried with her ever since. This is so fantastic. If I had to pick one book for you all to read, it would be this one. It is very fairy tale-esque. It is just so haunting. Peggy's voice is just very unique, and it has a really great twist at the end, and I just think it is brilliant. So please pick it up. Next up was The Bees by Laline Paull. I also heard about this on the Readers Podcast. I will go ahead and link their website down below. It's a great podcast. If you haven't listened to it, I really enjoy it. I've learned about a lot of great books from there. They discuss a variety of things, including new releases, current events in the literary world, as well as audiobooks, and just a large variety of things. It's a really great podcast. So The Bees is a dystopian book about a bee living in a colony. And this was so fascinating to me. I cannot even explain how much I just devoured this. It's from the point of view of one bee and the hierarchy of the hive, including the queens and the drones and the worker bees. And it is just so fascinating. It's a really difficult book to describe, but if you do like dystopian books or sci-fi books, this is very literary, but it definitely falls in those two categories. So I would definitely recommend picking this up. It's very unique, and I can't wait to see what else Laline is going to put out. The last book on my favorites list is The Rabbitback Literature Society, and this name is so hard. I've never said this out loud, so please forgive me. I'm probably going to butcher it, but Pasi, Ilmari, Jääskeläinen. Oh man, that's probably so bad. I'm so sorry. And this is about a famous children's author in this small town who has selected 9 children to basically join this Rabbitback Literature Society, where she grooms and teaches them to be famous authors. And the main character gets asked to join the society as well, and she soon learns that it's a lot darker than she had suspected, and they do this thing called the game. And that's all I'm going to say. The game is very strange. This book was quite whimsical, and I adored every minute of it. I cannot wait to see if this author brings out anything else, and I will definitely reread this at one point. So those are my favorite books for the year of 2015. I'm so excited to watch your videos of what your favorites were. If you do not have a channel, please tell me down below your favorite book of 2015, or if any of the ones that I have mentioned are ones that you have read or want to get to, so we can get chatting down in the comments. And once again, I hope you guys have a wonderful new year, and I will see you in the next video. Happy reading!